Hey folks, so this is going to be a continuation on my Zero Trust series. If you haven't checked out my earlier videos in the series, I'll add the links in the description. So in this one we'll venture into the first lab, right? What we'll do is we'll basically add SAML, single sign-on, authentication for one of our enterprise application. We'll also explore trusted endpoints, device health features, along with multi-factor authentication. As we go ahead with the use case, right? At the end of the video, you'll be able to see how simple it is to add single sign-on for a application and enable it with DUO single sign-on, right? So we'll be using Cisco's DUO solution to make this happen for us. Okay. Now let me jump on to a jump host. So I have a jump host here in my data center from where we'll be able to access all the services and we'll be able to configure everything. Okay. So let me get on to the jump host. Step number one would be to first go and activate our DUO, right? So Cisco DUO, it's a solution which provides zero trust for the workplace scenario. So what you're going to do is we'll just create a temporary account here. Right, you guys don't really need to use dcloud. You can also lab this out yourself as well. Some of these solutions out there have trial periods, right? Or if you do want to use dcloud, maybe you can reach out to your Cisco representative and they will be able to provide you, or they'll be able to work with you to kind of get a similar demo set up, right? That being said, so I'm basically creating a new account here with DUO, like a temporary account for us to explore this lab. Let's say get started. I'll have to create a password. So let's create a password, something which I can remember. All right, let's go. And now I'll have to take my phone and I'll have to scan this QR code, right? So let me connect my phone to the laptop. Give me a sec. All right, so I have my phone and let me just go and scan this. Sorry. Phone here. So I'm gonna open up DUO, right? My DUO app on my phone, and I'm gonna scan the QR code, which I just now did. So you can see it's trying to add the account. Great. All right, so we'll hit the continue here. It'll ask you to put in your mobile number, but for now I don't think we need this. I'm gonna skip this. We might need this at a later stage where I'll do that. All right, there you go. So we have enabled, what we just now did was we basically enabled the DUO admin panel, right? We enabled the login to the admin panel because I'm the administrator of this DUO. I added myself, right, as an admin, and I enabled multi-factor authentication for that as well, right? Cool. So now we should be actually able to log in, right? So let's click on this, right? So that's the username. So I'm going to save this for next time, right? And I'm going to click on continue. I'll put in the password. Hope that is right. Let's click continue. So it's gonna ask me for a DUO push, right? So I'm let me see. So I'm getting my phone on the right side here, right? I'm gonna send a DUO push, and the DUO should have appeared. So I'm gonna accept here. So you can see it got approved. You don't see much on my phone screen because I've kind of disabled much of it so that you guys don't see the stuff in the background of my phone, but you just now saw that I approved the DUO push, right? Which is great. And now we have access to our DUO admin page, right? So this is our DUO admin page. Let's probably go full screen here. All right, so we have the DUO page, right? This is the DUO admin page. So for starters, what we do is we'll do a bit of housekeeping. Let's go to settings, right? And in settings, let's go to custom branding, because if you're using this solution for your organization, you would want to see the logos and all of that appear pertaining to your organization, right? So we'll go to custom branding, right? And the custom branding will select the logo, right? And we already have some logos already in dcloud, so I'm just going to use those. I think it's in probably lab files. Yeah, so we have some logos, so I'm going to select this guy, right? It's Zero Trust Workshop, I believe. There's a logo which I'm going to use. Do I need to do anything else? Probably I can also select a background image, right? So I can select this to image here in the bottom, and let's go down and select a file. Right, so here I'm going to select this particular image. You can select any image you want. Right, so this is going to be right. This is how it is going to appear. Right, you see here on the top. This is how it's going to appear when we do any single sign-on from now on. Right, let's actually go full screen here. All right, so we put in all the information we want. It's better we scroll down and click on publishing. So where is that? Here, right? So let's go and select this publishing and click on publish to everyone, and we will click on save changes. Okay, so now what we have done is we have just enabled DUO for our organization, for this fictitious organization, and we have added some logos and some background images so that it appears in the dialog box every time we do authentication. Alright, so now let's start with our actual single sign-on. So let's go to single sign-on option here, right? And just accept your policies and click on activate and start setup. It will ask you for a subdomain, right? So you can look at the rest of the domain because we are activating SSO, which is a cloud-based solution. So this part of the URL will still remain to be the same, but you get to customize this starting part. I'm just going to go with something like bits please probably 2 because I already have set up one for bits please 1, so I don't want it to kind of give me an error. So I'm going to say bits please 2 because that's my organization. You can pick whatever works for you. I'm going to say save and continue, confirm. Right, so now we are talking about single sign-on, right? So let me see if I have a document here to explain what we are doing. All right, so I've pulled up a documentation from DUO which explains a bit about what we're trying to do, right? So DUO has this cloud-based single sign-on solution, right? So this is basically what you see in the middle is basically an IDP, right? You basically might need to know a little bit about SAML and SSO to understand this. You can probably Google that up, or you can even read this documentation. It gives you a good understanding. But the whole idea is that on the left hand side you have your applications, right? This could be on-premise or cloud SaaS applications, whatever. So they will act as a service provider. In case of SAML, we have two things, right? We have a service provider and we have IDP, right? Identity provider. So DUO basically acts as the cloud-based identity provider here in the center, and that SSO's identity provider you can integrate with either an on-premise Active Directory, or you can use a IDP, which is a cloud-based as well. You have so many of those. You can use DUO actually integrates with many of those, right? The deployment this is what we are going to do, right? So the DUO's IDP will need to talk to your Active Directory. In our use case, this is what we are going to do. So it needs to talk to Active Directory. So for that reason, we'll have to put a proxy in the middle, right? So this authentication proxy has to be installed, and that is the one which will talk to IDP on one side and it will talk to the Active Directory on the other side. That's how now your applications will be able to perform primary authentication using what? Your Active Directory, and secondary authentication will be done using MFA, right? DUO MFA, right? That's what we are trying to do. Okay. Coming back to our setup, we went into single sign-on. Like I said, we can either use on-premise Active Directory or you can use a IDP, right, which is cloud-based. These are all the ones which are supported, but we will use Active Directory. So let's go and say add Active Directory. And for the Active Directory to work, like I said, we need the authentication proxy, right? The authentication proxy has to be set up. So we'll go and say add authentication proxy. Okay. Now The next is, so again, it's pretty simple. They give you like each and every step which you need to configure. So in our case, what we'll do is, what we need to basically do is we need to copy the contents of this section, right? So I'm gonna just say, click on copy here, and we need to go to our Active Directory, right? So we need to RDP into Active Directory. So let's go here, let's go to RDP, and I think there should be, yeah, AD, right? So let's go and connect to AD. Right, so we are authenticating into the Active Directory now, and here we have already a shortcut set up. I mean, ideally this won't be that, because this is a Duo. I mean, this is a dcloud lab. You already have certain things already cooked and kept ready. But in our case, what we'll do is, we don't want this. Let's just double click on this, and it will start the installation of Authentication Proxy. Normally you can download this Authentication Proxy from Duo and install it, like copy it here and then install it, right? So let's go next, and let's click on, let's install this Authentication Proxy. We are installing it on the AD, right, Active Directory. So let's wait for it to finish. All right, so I'm going to click on next, and once we are done, we'll say finish. Okay, so now it's going to open the Authentication Proxy, and what we'll do is we'll have to go to the left side of this section. So I'm going to just say Control A, and let's just go about deleting the whole thing, and instead let's paste what we copied from the Duo admin panel, right? As simple as that. Once we have pasted, let's go and quickly save it. Okay, I'm going to say save and continue. Alright, this is how it appears. Next, let's minimize this AD and go back to our jump host, and let's see what's the next step. The next step is we need to copy this, and we need to run this from where? We need to run it again from the command prompt of the Active Directory. So I'm going to just copy this guy. Let's open up again. Let's go back to this guy which we already have open, right? The Active Directory. Let's open command prompt this time, right? So we have command prompt here, and we need to paste it. So I'm gonna just click on, I believe it's paste. Yeah, there you go, we pasted it. So once we paste it, we'll hit the enter button. So it's gonna do some magic. Basically, it is going to connect the Duo proxy, right? It is going to connect this proxy to what? To our Duo, to our SSO, right? IDP, right? So we have done that. If you want, we can probably hit a restart service as well, right? So once it restarts, we'll go to the Duo admin panel. There you go, it is running. So let's go to the Duo admin panel here, and let's run the test, right? And you see it is successfully connected. So what did we just now do? If you go back to this diagram, so we connected this this guy, the Duo, which is on the cloud, right? The IDP, we have connected it to the Authentication Proxy, and the Authentication Proxy has been connected to the Active Directory because we installed it on the Active Directory, right? So we need to do a bit of configurations for that, and that we will do now, right? So where do we do that configuration? Let's say return to configuration, and yeah, there you go, right? The second section. So now we are telling Duo a little bit more details about our Active Directory. Why? Because the Authentication Proxy has to talk to it, correct? So I'm going to keep the Active Directory name. It can be anything. IP address is important. In our case, the AD IP address, the domain control is at 198, I believe, 198.18.11.1, right? 198.18.11.1, great. And the port number is going to be 389. Okay, perfect. We need to put in the DNs here, right? In our case, we are basically installing. Our local domain name is dcloud.local. So I'm going to use DC is equal to dcloud and DC is equal to local here, right? This will again depend upon what is your local domains, right? Okay, so once we are done with that, let's come down. Authentication type will remain integrated. Transport type is unencrypted. Email attributes, let's keep it to mail, so that users are going to use their mail IDs to log in. And the next is we need to mention the domains from where the email IDs are going to come in, right? User email IDs. So this is going to be anything, like for example, if I had a company like Bitsplace, then I would generally want my users to, I would basically set up my email server and AD and everything such that people can use things like user@bitsplace.com, right? So we need to tell DUO what is going to be that domain name from where the emails are going to come in. So it's going to be dc-01.com, right? This is what has been used for the dcloud lab. I'm going to use this, but this will be obviously different for your organization, right? I'm going to say add, which is great. Now I believe there is also an option to validate this. We will not do it because I don't think this domain is registered. Yeah, I think this is pretty much it. The next is, what do we do next? Yeah, like I said, we are not going to run the test, so I'm just going to go to the bottom and save this, right? So we have saved all the configurations which we wanted. And now let's click on go back to single sign-on. Okay, which is great. Now you see it is showing that Active Directory integration is successful, right? It is showing enabled and it is happening via the authentication proxy, which is what we wanted. You will implement this, your trusted feature, trusted endpoints, right? So what DUO can do is it can look into your inventory from sources like Active Directory, or if you have like a MDM solution, right? So it can look into that and it can figure out if the user is accessing a particular resource either from a managed device or not from a managed device, right? That's the feature, and you can then create policies based on that. All right, so what we will do here is we just account for only the Windows part, right? So let's go and enable this trusted endpoints feature. So let's go to trusted endpoints here. You can read about it a bit here. It gives you information on how to enable this for laptops, desktops, or for mobile phones. We'll say get started. Let's probably go full screen again. And here you will basically find there is a section called Active Directory. So you'll have to add the integration for this one, right? So in the drop down we'll select Windows, click on add. Right now it's going to give you a command which you need to copy and run this on where? The Active Directory. So I'm going to copy this. Alright, I've pulled off my Active Directory. Let's close the command prompt. We don't need it anymore. Let's actually close or minimize this. Not needed for now. Let's go to what? Let's go to the PowerShell. We want PowerShell for this. So I'm going to search for PowerShell. Right, here you go. And it should be there here. Okay, I think I'm not in the full screen. Let's go to full screen, and there you go. The PowerShell is here. Right, so this is double click. It's going to open up, and we need to just paste it. So I'm going to click on right click, and there you go. It got pasted. So once that is done, once you paste this, and you just hit the enter key, right? It's going to run, and once it is run, it is going to the output of this will not be visible on the screen. It's just going to copy a special identifier called as SID value, right? It's a security identifier. It gets copied to the clipboard so that you can then go and copy it onto your DUO. Hope it got copied. Let's see if I can paste it here. Yes, there you go. So that's a SID value. So once you run that command on PowerShell, SID value gets copied, which is a security identifier of your AD domain, right? So now when a computer belonging to this domain is accessing a resource, DUO will be able to figure out that, hey, yes, this is coming from a particular domain, right? Cool. So once we are done with that, what do we do next? So we have got the value, we have copied it, and we can go and click the save button. Next, we'll scroll down to the bottom, and here we'll basically find an option to enable the integration. So we'll enable it, and we'll say activate for all, not for a specific group, but for the whole domain, right? For everyone. So I'm gonna save that as well. So that's mainly it. On the top, you'll get this message saying that Active Directory with device health integration was successful. Okay, we can even go back now. Let's click on Trusted Endpoints, and you can see here, you see the Active Directory with device health, Windows and status is active. All right, let's go to the next step. All right, so as a next step, we'll actually enable what we call as DUO device health application. This is another application which the users will need to install on their endpoint, but it then gives DUO a great control on what type of clients are going to connect, right? You can do basically a health check on the endpoint. Like for example, let me show you a screenshot here below. Yeah, so this is how it basically looks finally, right? You can see this application will be running, on your endpoint, but then you can define certain checks. You can check if the operating system firewall is enabled, if the file vault is enabled, if the password is set, if the system is running the latest software and all of that, right? So to get this visibility, you need to install this application. Once you install the application, the administrator like myself can define those policies, which are very critical for the organization, and thereby we can achieve those zero trust principles. All right, so to do this, let's play around with the policies. Let's come back. Let's go to policies. Right, and so this is a global policy which is going to be there. The good thing about DUO is that you can define all the policies only once and then reuse it wherever you want. Right, so we'll scroll down to the custom section, and we'll not be using the global policy. We'll create a new policy. And first, we'll create a policy for our employees, right? Because it's an organization, there will be employees. I'm gonna select employees, and now on the left hand side you can create those subsection of the policy. New user policy. Let's keep it default. We'll say that the new users will need enrollment. For authentication policy, we will say we will need 2FA, right? Multi-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication has been enabled. If you don't want, you can kind of like bypass it and stuff. You can change the settings here if you want, but we want it, so we are enabling it. We just now enabled trusted endpoints, didn't we? So we'll go and select that. We'll go to trusted endpoints, and what do we do here? I'm going to click and say require all endpoints to be trusted. So which means that only managed endpoints will be able to access the application, otherwise not. Cool. The next section is what we are doing right now, the device health application. So in the device health application, again, we are not talking about Mac, we're just going to Windows. And in Windows, what we will do is we'll change this reporting to, there should be an option to change this to enforcing, right? So yeah, so this is the section. What do we want? For starters, let's not get very complicated. Let's say you require the users to have the app, which is the device health application. And we need to block access of users who have disabled firewall, right? So we'll say block access if firewall is off. That's it. Okay, so that's how it looks like. And what else do we want? Probably let's go to remembered devices. These are all the settings which we can play around, right? So this basically again takes care of how device or MFA requests are triggered, if it's a device, remembered device or not, right? So I'm going to say remember the devices for browser based applications, but not 30 days. I'm going to just remember it for 1 day, right? So that the users don't have to do MFA every now and then. You can change it if you want. And here as well, let me go for the second option, which is after a user has confirmed for any application, their device will be remembered for all applications, right? If I'm using SSO and MFA for, say, I don't know, maybe Jira, then I can open another application and I will not need to do MFA again because I've just now done it for the other one. If you don't want that, then if you want to enforce MFA for every application, you can uncheck that, right? Cool. So with all of those features, again, you have a lot of other things you want to play around with. For now, this is good. So we will go and create policy here. Okay. So this is the policy which we created. You can scroll down. So this is the employee policy which we created. And next, let's go to the SaaS application, or in our case, actually it's an on-prem application which we are trying to protect. Right, so let's log into this application. Let's open up again. So you can technically use this for any application, but depending on if that application has enabled SSO, right? If they have a feature to enable SSO. In our case, we are using Jira, and you see the URL. It is jira.dcloud.local, which means that it is a on-prem hosted application, right? It's hosted in our own, our own infrastructure. But the idea is that you can technically do this for any cloud-based application as well, because SSO and SAML are like standards out there, right? So let's log in. Let's log in with the dcloud, and let's put in the password as well. I think there is a, okay, maybe not. I'm gonna say remember and log in. All right, so we have logged in, and let's get to the settings part of this application. So to get to the settings, let's go and click on this icon. Let's go to user management. And in the password, again, we will have to give the password which we just now copied. So put the password again. And in the left hand side, you will find single sign-on, SAML single sign-on settings. So this is all hosted on dcloud, right? Whatever data you see here is all dummy data. It's not real. It's just a lab which has been set up on dcloud for people to look at the technology. So yeah, here now the next thing is, because we are talking about SAML, right? So in SAML, like I said, your application Jira will be the service provider, but you need IDP. So DUO SSO will act as the IDP. So we'll say add IDP. Here in the drop down, DUO is not listed, so I'll just go directly and select other IDP. You need a name, so I'm gonna select instead of this other IDP, I'm gonna say DUO, maybe DUO SSO. Description is not mandatory, so it's fine. Let's go next step. So here you go, you get some settings. What we'll do is let's quickly copy this entity ID which is needed for us, right? And let's come back to the DUO admin panel, right? And let's quickly go to applications here, right? The UI is pretty simple when you look at DUO, right? All applications you can protect from here. So I'm going to go to applications, click on protect application. And instead of, there are some modern applications, popular applications listed here. For Jira, I'll just go and select generic, right? So any application out there which is implementing, SAML with in a generic way as per the standard, you can use this, right? So I'm going to say generic SAML service provider hosted by DUO. Don't use the first option. This is DUO Access Gateway. This used to be used in the past where they had a IDP, on-prem IDP, but now they are going, I think it's already end of life. So you'll have to use the cloud-based IDP, which is the second option here. So I'm going to select protect. So here it's going to ask me those things, right? Whatever I copied over there. So not this one. Let's scroll down to the service provider section. Where is the service provider? That's the settings. Did we lose it? Let's go to the top maybe. Yeah, here we go, right? In the service provider section, let's copy the stuff which we let's paste the stuff which we copied earlier. So that's the entity ID. So we'll have to copy the same thing for the URL, right? Assertion customer URL and the logout URL, right? Why are we doing this? Because like I said, when people are trying to access the application, it has to be redirected to DUO, correct? So that for the IDP and all the username, password verification to have the primary authentication to happen. So that's why we need to link our Jira to what? To the DUO SSO. And that's what we did just now by pasting that URL. We'll also put the same URL for what? For the login, logout as well. Okay. Next, what do we do next? Let's scroll down a bit and see there is a name ID attributes. I think it should be maybe somewhere on the top. SAML response and name ID attributes. Okay, maybe it's below. Yeah, name ID attribute over here. Instead of the email address, let's use username here. Okay. All right, so that's mainly it. Why did we do this name ID attribute? Because again, like I said, we are integrating Jira with DUO SSO. So when a user is logging into Jira, right, they'll be putting their username, which is nothing but an email address, but it's actually username, right? So we need to map what the user is inputting. We need to map what that will be called on the DUO side as well. So we are basically mapping it to the username, right? So yeah, I think you'll understand once we do a complete demo at the end. So that's mainly the settings side of things. What else? Let's also probably scroll maybe to the bottom, and the prompt which will be shown here, right? It is the show new universal prompt, right? So that will be shown. We'll look at the prompt while we do the demo. Probably let's get to the settings section, and we can give a name for our application. So instead of this generic thing appearing, let's just change this and call it Jira, because that's the application we are giving access. And we need to save all of this, right? So let's come down and click the save button. Okay, good, it got saved. What else? Okay, maybe I think we did not do the policy part. Let's look at the policy part. Okay, there is a policy section here, right? So remember I told you we create policies at one place and then reuse the policies everywhere. So we created a policy for what? A group called employees, right? You can apply two types of policies. One is group policy, one is application policy. So if you apply this application policy, then what happens is that policy will be applied for any user, irrespective of the groups, right? Or you can create different policies per group and you can assign those. For now, we'll use the application policy. We can change this later. In fact, I'll show you how to change it later, right? So we'll select the employee policy and apply the policy. And once we have applied the policy, the next thing is we need to get a configuration file, right, of the SAML, which you can get from here, right? Download the XML. So let's click on download that metadata, because we need this while we do the configuration on the Jira, right? So let's go to the Jira now. So here, let's click on next, nothing else to do. Now this is the place where, it is going to ask you for that XML file. So I'm going to select, I have the metadata XML file, right? This is the IDP metadata information. This XML file has information about the DUO SSO. So I'm going to select XML and I just put it in my downloads folder. So let's get to the downloads folder, select it and open, right? Click on the import so that it gets imported. Import was successful, which is good. Let's go next. The IDP name attribute matches the user ID, right? This is what we did, right? We mapped it. We did the configuration earlier and we mapped it, which is good. And we go to the next. And user update method. That's fine. We'll go and save and next. Okay. So click the configuration has been saved. Okay, see if I can click next. It's going to ask click OK to continue without a test. We don't want to do a test, so we'll just go and say OK. And finally you get this where you have to enable the SSO redirect on the application. And I think we are good, so we can save and close this. All right, time for us to verify whatever we have done, right? So this is like the final part of the validation. Actually, there is one more part after this, but let's validate whatever we have done till now, right? So yeah, let's go to the overview page here. Meanwhile, let's also open up the other workstation. So this is which workstation? I'll actually show you that in the diagram. Give me a minute. So this is actually this one, right? So the roaming client, which is here, right? So we are trying to now log into this client as an employee, right? Because we set up the policies for the employee. So what is the employee username? So we are going to use something called as Karen, right? So there's a employee by name Karen at DC-01 That's the email domain, which is great. Let's probably put in the password. Let's say continue. Alright, so we have logged in. Let's get into the Google Chrome here. Just go full screen 1 sec. Okay. So on here, what do? Let's try to log into that application which we have enabled with single sign-on, right? So let's go to Jira. Okay. So now this is where we need to put the employee username and password. All right. So let's put the username password here, which is gonna be this one. Go next, and the password is gonna be what? Let's copy the password. All right. So I'm putting the password. Okay, so you see it is giving me an error saying that we don't have the DUO device health, right? That application is not there, right? So we basically need to install this. So what we'll do is we'll click on the download the app button and we'll try to install this. So let's double click once it is downloaded. I'm gonna say yes. It's a straightforward installer, right? You just click on next and it will get installed, right? Now it got installed, and what do we see? It has already gone and activated, and it is already giving us a recommendation. It is telling us that, look, the policy has been set that we will not give access unless the firewall is enabled. But right now on this machine, firewall is disabled, correct? So we'll click on this. It will also give us what? Ways to fix it. See, that is also giving us steps to kind of correct it. So I'm going to click on this, open system and security, and then on the left, either you can follow the exact steps, or I can just click on use recommended settings, which will just enable. See, it has enabled the firewalls now, which is great, right? Now let's come back here to the screen. Let's go back, right? This time let's do a restart session. It's asking us to restart because I think got timed out, right? And there you go. Go next. Or wait, let's probably do it from start again, right? So let's go to Jira. Okay, it's giving us this. Great. It's asking us to set up an account. Let's go next. Okay, there you go, right? So it's asking us to set up an account. Now I'll click this button. So this time I will have to put my phone number because I've already used the same phone for setting up my admin account with DUO, right? So I'll have to put in my phone number. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video here. I'll put the phone number and I'll set it up and I'll be back because otherwise my phone number will be visible on the video. Alright, so once I put my phone number, it is going to ask me to scan this QR code using my DUO app, which I'll do now. You can see on my phone, there you go, it's adding the account. Perfect. And I'm going to say, added to a phone. Since you added phone, you can also use text messages, which is great. Alright, so it's gonna say, do you want other ways to log in? I'm gonna say skip for now. And we are good. See, it has set up. So we did the user enrollment right now, right? And everything is set up. So now we are good to we are good to kind of log in with DUO. So I'm gonna again go with let's just keep this on the side. Okay, let's click on login with DUO. And now see, it is going to give me a push. Keep observing my phone. I'm approving it. There you go. It got approved. I'll move the phone away. And it's going to ask me an option. Do you want to trust the browser? I'm going to say yes. And finally, after user enrollment, we should now actually have access to what? You can see the URL. It was bits please 2, which is what we set up earlier. And finally, you see the Jira cloud is loading, Jira dcloud, right? There you go. We have access to Jira now. We enabled single sign-on and added all these cool features, which is what, trusted trusted endpoints, device health, and all of that, and we were able to get access. Pretty cool, isn't it? Now let's quickly jump onto the browser and let's look at the logs. Let's probably refresh this a bit. You can see the logs here which have come in. You can see earlier we tried accessing using Karen, but it was denied because obviously the firewall was disabled. Then the user downloaded the obviously we did the downloading of the device health app, we enabled the firewall, then the user enrolled into Duo, and finally you see the access was granted, right? So you can see very granular. You can even click on a specific thing. You can see from which particular endpoint has the user logged in, and a bunch of details about the endpoint and so on, which is pretty cool, isn't it? Now, the last part of this is what where I wanted to show about, or we wanted to talk about how to make how to do the least privilege access, right, or do a role-based access. In this particular case, what I just want to do is I want to provide the same Jira access to one of my contractor, right? Karen was an employee, but I want to also provide the same access to a contractor. So what I can do is probably, this is my Duo panel, right? What I'll do is I'll go to the users section. There should already be a user called Karen, right? Let's add one more user. I'm going to call this person Bob. Add user. Right? It was that simple to add the user. Right? So we added a user. Let's see if there's a save button at the top bottom. Maybe not. Okay, let's probably click on save changes here. That's enough. And then once we have added the user, what we'll also do is we'll create groups. Right? Let's create 2 groups. Right now we don't have any groups. Let's create one group. We'll call it as employees. Right? So employees, and then we'll also create one more group called as what? So this is the employee, and we can add users to this group. I'm gonna add whom? Karen to this group, obviously, because she's obviously my employee, right? Let's again go back to groups. Let's create one more group called as contractors. Right, so we've got contractors, and let's add the group, and to this group we'll add the other user who is going to be Bob. Now Bob is not yet enrolled, so we created a manual user here, but technically if Bob can also enroll, in that case the user would have directly appeared here. You would have observed that with Karen. Karen is something which we did not add her directly to the portal, but the user enrolled, right? So great. So let's add this user. So we have our groups created. Let's probably have a look. Maybe let's save this guy and let's go to groups and let's just make sure everything is good. So we have 2 groups, 1 user in each of them. Now let's go to the policies and let's go to that custom policy which we created, right? So we created an employee policy. Let's go and create one more policy for whom? Contractors. Perfect. Let's create a new user, right? We can do require enrollment. We're gonna keep all of that. Authentication policy also we'll keep the default, which is enforced multi-factor. Let's go to device health application or trusted endpoints. We can't do anything in trusted employees because this is a contractor, right? So his laptop will not be present in the Active Directory. So we'll go directly to device health application. Here we'll enforce certain things. Let's go to Windows. Let's select require the app. So we'll say it should have the firewall, and in addition to that we will also say the user needs to run certain antivirus software or anti-malware. So we'll select Cisco Secure Endpoint, and we'll also select what? Windows Defender. right? There you go. So we'll say that the user not just should have the firewall turned on, in addition you should have these two antiviruses as well, right? You can also put some descriptive messages here. If the user doesn't have these both, he'll get an error, and that description will be helpful. Like you can probably put in a message telling that, hey, contact the help desk at this particular email or something. Cool. Then let's come to the operating systems. And here, let's make sure that because the Bob is basically a BYOD, right? Bring your own device. So the Bob is actually a contractor who is trying to access Jira, but by using his own laptop. So we'll make sure that his laptop, obviously Android, I'm not concerned. Let's go to the Windows side. I think it's at the bottom. So we'll come to the Windows and we'll make sure that we are going to encourage the users to update, update their operating system if it is less than the latest. When a version becomes out of date, encourage to update immediately. Let's keep that. Block, if they are not running the latest version, we are going to block it. So if end of life, not the latest version, if it's end of life, we'll block it. So let's probably say Windows XP or Windows 7 and stuff like that. So we'll block it. When a version becomes out of date, block immediately. Yeah, there you go. So this is the whole continuous monitoring part which I talked about, right? Whenever a particular operating system becomes end of life, becomes non-compliant, the access is removed. Great. And then all of this is good, and probably anonymous networks as well. So we can select the anonymous networks, right? So this one, basically what we are trying to do here is preventing access of the application. We are going to deny it from any high risky networks, right? Going through certain proxies and all of that, VPN, Tor and stuff, right? We are blocking the access from those networks which are not very secure. And then if you want further cool stuff, you can also go to mobile device biometrics. You can enable biometrics as well. I think my phone has fingerprint scanner, so I'm going to just enable that as well, require additional biometric for verification. With all of that in place, let's say create policy. Okay, so what we did just now, we just created this new policy called as contractors. Okay, there is something which, okay, it needs this. So I'm going to say, please contact help desk, right? I think that was mandatory. Now let's create the policy. Okay, there you go, went through. Now next what you need to do is you need to go to the application which you are protecting, which is Jira in our case. Applications, let's go to Jira, and what? Let's select let's go to the policy section, right? So in the policy section, this time we will unassign this policy, or first let's assign, instead of doing application based policy, let's do group based policies. So I'm gonna say apply group based policy, right? And let's add what? Let's add contractors to the group contractors. So the contractor policy will be applicable for the contractor users. We already have an employee policy, so what I'm going to do is first unassign it, because that is the application policy. I want to make this employee policy also into a group policy. So I'm going to go to here, add another group policy, select employees, apply policy. All right, looks good. And I think we can hit a save. I think we are good. Now we are good to go and check, or we are good to go and kind of like explore this particular user. Go to my workstation. Let's see if I can kind of like sign out of this Karen laptop, right? So let's go and see if I can do that. Click on that. Okay. Where is that? I think it's settings maybe, or okay, here, right? So I'm gonna sign out of Karen, and this time I want to log in as what? Bob, correct? So I'm gonna double click, connect, and let's go as Bob. Let's put the username as Bob because this is the contractor. Remember, this contractor doesn't have a managed endpoint. This is just a BYOD device now. So I'm logging in. Alright, so logged in. let's get into the Jira application with the new user now. Gonna put that in, and let's put the password as well. So once you are done with that, so it's going to ask me to kind of enable MFA, right? So DUO device health application, let me install that. This is pretty much the same as what we did earlier, so I'm gonna just quickly pause it and install the application. Now it's going to ask me to enroll for DUO again, which means I'll have to put my phone number. So let me do that. Let me pause the video and finish that. So now let's go to the next, and it is going to give me my QR code. So I'm going to take my phone and scan it using the DUO app. There you go, I scanned it. On the right hand side you can see the account is getting added. Perfect. I'm going to say continue and skip for now and log in with DUO, right? So when I do that, wants to open the application. Yep, please go ahead, open it. You can see it is giving me recommendations to update it. I'm gonna say skip for now. Now you see on the right hand side, I'm going to approve the MFA. It is asking me for biometrics. I'm gonna put my fingerprint. There you go, it got approved. Awesome. So we have successful login, right? So what we ended up doing is, now we provided access to a contractor, right? Using MFA, using single sign-on. And if you probably want to just double verify, you can click on the Windows button here and you should see Bob, right? There you go. So we provided access to Bob, did we? Great. So that's what we did, guys. We did this whole exercise. Let's go back to my screen just to make sure we have completed everything we wanted to. So we picked an application. So this is what we did. We picked an application which is Jira in this case, and we added single sign-on using SAML, right? Then we added some extra, and the single sign-on was hosted on DUO. So it's a cloud-based IDP, right? Using that we enable single sign-on. We enabled some extra features like Trusted Endpoints, device health, right? We added MFA with certain policies where we did like, we created two separate policies, one for employees and one for contractors. You can customize these policies based on your needs. And then finally, we were able to see that the employee is able to log into the application as well as the contractor. Right? Cool. So hope that was a good lab. Let's come back for the next one, which will be more on the use case around remote